This is Hard Parking, brought to you by Right Honda and Right Toyota out of Scottsdale, Arizona. Coming up on today's show, Nick Kingsley, local car modifier, car builder, specifically with collisions and a few other things. In his mid to late 20s, we'll find out exactly how old he is in a few moments. But it was a pleasure having him in studio. Wow, what an amazing story. The stuff that he's gone through, the things he's had to deal with are not unlike a lot of you, but some of them I can promise you haven't had to deal with, and I don't know if I could have dealt with that stuff as he continues to struggle with some of those demons. But an amazing young individual, and I'm stoked to have had him in studio. And we're going to call this part one because there's so much more to talk about. And so after this word from Arcus Foundry, Nick Kingsley. Business tech feeling whack? Too many tools, too much chaos, not enough time? Arcus Foundry is here to fix that. With SparkForge, you get a unified platform that connects everything you need. Your website, social media, phone systems, and more. There is no need for an expensive IT department or dealing with a bunch of separate systems. It truly is the all-in-one solution that saves you time and helps your business run smoother. Head over to arcusfoundry.com and use the code HARDPARKED to get your first month free. Upgrade your tech and get back to business. Nick Kingsley, welcome to Hard Parking.
Yeah,
it's good to have you in studio.
Thanks for inviting me on.
Of course, dude. So it was a few weeks ago, we did the Copper State 1000, and you crashed into the booth and we had a conversation, but I said we're going to talk again later, and this is later. But first and foremost, what did you bring today? Let me crack this so you can kind of take us through it.
All right, so every year at Car Week, there's a Alvarado Street Brewery. Mm-hmm. They usually theme a car. I know in, I think it was 2024, might have been 23 was F40s. The year before that was the Countach, so this is it, and it's it's just an IPA, but they make their own beer in house. They can it themselves, and they make their own label. So I figured I'm just like, again, I'm a big Countach guy, and that's why I got it. And they come in a 4-pack, so I snipped off 2, so I still have 2 at my house. But I figured car guy to car guy, you'd probably appreciate it.
I appreciate it. So that means I can actually drink one and keep one in the office.
It's 2 years old, so
in the studio. Well, it must be good.
I'll be honest.
Beer might have a shelf life.
I didn't have. It's at 8.
22.
No. Oh, that's when it was canned, but
well,
I didn't have super high praise for it when I had it, but it's a novelty thing.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. We'll set those little boogers to the side.
So,
but yeah, and then of course to sip on, you brought your drink of choice.
Yeah,
we're not doing bourbon, which is fine. But you do we got the Angry Orchard.
Yeah, I just started drinking these like maybe a month ago, and I've kind of just had a soft spot for them since. Like I don't know why. Past like years, some body can't really tolerate like any like bourbon or scotch or anything like that. It's just like
I got you. I'll drink whatever you can't tolerate. Yeah.
And like sake's one thing, but anything else like it's 5-10 minutes. I'm just like,
Sure. So. Well, let's cheers. So we were talking about some stuff earlier, and I didn't hit record, so there's no Patreon bonus for that. But I need to know more about you, because and the funny story is we've been communicating for a long time.
Yeah. Well,
on Instagram.
Well, we met actually years ago. Like I think Aaron introduced us, but it was like, like I knew who you were, but you're just like, oh, it's some kid, quick, hey, how you doing? And like,
Don't tell me I big timed you, dude.
No, but then it's like, because I'll be honest, like, I didn't start getting like more known, and it's like, again, I always chat with everyone on social media. That's just how I am.
Right.
I'm always like, you'll post something like, oh, that's neat, or like, oh, I kind of know about that car from this, or my opinion on that, like little, and that's kind of how we talked, Well,
it's funny too, because it was like a year ago, maybe, we were chatting. And then we were at the same event. Or no, I think I saw you had posted something, and I saw you in the picture. I go, oh, I see this dude everywhere.
Yeah. yeah.
And then I felt embarrassed. I was like, I see this guy everywhere. Like everywhere I go, you're there. Or I'm not everywhere you're at. And we're going to talk about that. But I have a question for you. How old are you?
25.
25.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we were on the Copper State and you were talking about some of your dream cars and things, when you're in high school and things of that nature, and you had mentioned the NSX, the new NSX, I'm like, fuck.
Yeah.
I'm officially old.
That was like 20. How do you think I feel? That was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
High school years was, let's see. Oh, shit. It's going to date me a little bit too. Freshman year was like 2014, graduated, left campus 2018.
Are you from here?
Yeah. Yeah, so I was born in Chandler, and then I went to Chandler High. I was part of the 100th graduating class. I lived in one house till last year. So I'm pretty fortunate. Chandler, I remember when this was all fields.
Right.
Before it exploded in the past 4 or 5 years. And
At
even
least,
then,
yeah.
to me, it's it's exploded in the past 25 years.
Sure. Dude, so when we moved here 10 years ago, this was the last neighborhood.
Yeah.
And then all these other more expensive houses popped up.
My dad, my dad's Christian, so he always went to church a lot growing up. One of his good friends at church, the name was Howard Morrison.
Oh, Morrison Ranch?
Morrison Ranch. So the family motto is mountain to mountain.
Wow.
But it was so we'd always go have food and it was they owned all of the farmland and everything like that. So it was just okay, that was cool. And then it blows my mind when we go south. To me, it was 202 South was you don't go far past that. There's nothing out there. Now I'm just houses.
Yeah.
More houses.
That's where they film all the movies.
Holy suburbs, more houses.
Right.
Shit, more houses, and it's me and my dad, we used to always go to Tucson once every 6 months, once every year to go to the museum down there. And it was I remember where we'd hop off right before I think it's the Pima Res. And
are you talking about the Pima Air and Space Museum, where they have a car museum or something?
Pima Air and Space. And we'd always head down there, and it was the way we'd get off, you'd go through Res kind of south of us.
Oh, absolutely.
And, it was fields for a long time after it was Res, and then it got to, I think we'd basically take Arizona up for the most part, and then, once they start getting close, we'd kind of hop over, take back streets, get back to the house. But now it's last time we did it was a couple years ago, and I was just shit.
Yeah, that's the official way from the 10.
Yeah.
It always has you exit early, and you're kind of snaking through, and next thing you know, you're in Arizona.
Yep. So, and it's just houses on top of houses, and I'm just okay,
So you would go to this, the Pima Air and Space Museum. So there has to be a reason why. But first, let's give you a proper introduction. Why don't you tell the people who you are and what you're known for?
Yeah, I'm just kind of known for being the kid who always gets his ass in some cool seat around town, or I do paint and body works as a specialty. But wide bodies are kind of my thing I'm getting known for. Also, it's I get to work on some cool shit. So,
Understatement.
Yeah. I've gotten some fairly neat opportunities, I would say. Nothing super crazy, but I've gotten some cool deals.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think I've seen video of you driving some pretty rad cars.
Yeah. There's also a lot of cool shit I actually don't post about because I don't like some of the attention I get from it. But it's in the car scene, I'm in an interesting spot because it's most technicians are kind of they're kind of quiet for the most part. Or they got contracts with dealerships, so we can't post this and this and this, and I'm over here. It's I'm working on Countach's and I'm doing this, or it's I work crazy ass hours. At least when I have extra work to do. So it's I kind of got known for you got photographers, owners, and then I'm somewhere in the middle of this entire group, where it's the dealers know me, the business owners know me, the photographers know me, the owners know me. I'm kind of a cool central, so it's kind of get a hand in every pot, if you will, in terms of what people like, whether it's the custom JDM stuff or the the exotic hypercar stuff to luxury to this, and before you know it,
all at the age of 25.
Yeah, it's I'd say past 4 years is when it's really picked up, but I mean the past 5 years in general has been a wild ride. So
yeah, we can get into some of that. So to the Air and Space Museum, is that a family thing?
So yeah, grandfather was a pilot.
Is he the same one that smacked you for liking the Ferrari or something?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Grandfather was a pilot, World War II, night fighter, came fighter race, test pilot after, SR-71s, coolest cat you could imagine, right? It's it's cool, you were overqualified to be an astronaut. That's dope as shit. And, I got pictures of him at Le Mans in '66 with the Ford team, so I think that's where the Ferrari hatred kind of stirred.
Sure.
Got pictures of him smoking scarves with the Ferruccio. That's kind of where the Lamborghini part started. And then growing up, hang out with him, it was like, cool, we got a 55 going. We're going to fix up, restore, do this or that. Wow. Or like, here's an authentic GT40, 275 GTB, a lot of Countachs, Diablos, Murcielagos, XJ220, EB110s, you know, kind of that era of vintage, I guess.
Right.
And that's where you get to learn to like to appreciate some of that stuff, you know.
So how did you get started in this space? Because you've named a lot of different cars, and again, you're 25, so you're not that removed from this stuff. Like, how did you get started in this space?
So I saw a Japanese dude cutting up Porsches.
Mm-hmm.
And like I always kind of knew about him. And I was, again, it's going to become a topic, I think, a lot in this, is like something popular comes out and kind of shows this thing off. People are like, oh, I've always loved that. That's amazing. It's like, dude, you didn't know about it before this came out, you know? And RWB to me was one of those things. Like I saw it in magazines, I'm like, this is cool. Again, we're talking like Need for Speed 2015 is when it popped. 2015 is when I got my license. Again, high school, you know.
Right.
Best boss I ever had, Chris Carroll over at TurboCraft in Mesa, looked at me one day and he's like, no car is ever going to be cooler than what came out when you were in high school. And I found that's what you were into in high school. It's like, yeah, you're like, oh, I got to mature a little bit later on. And you're just like, fuck this. I'm still an idiot, you know? And then you're just like, that's back to what's cool, right? It's nostalgia, but it's a little bit more of like, this is what I hold, right? And to me, it was like, you know, home life was kind of always rocky, to say the best. You know, whether it's like, you know, parents divorced, this and that, a bunch of other shit, where it was like, I was kind of isolated a lot.
You have any siblings?
I got a brother. We didn't get super close till later.
Is he older?
He's older.
Yeah. I
got, my older brother Tyler, and I got a half brother. And then it's me. And so Tyler's, let's see, February 96. Daniel is March of 96. And then I am September of 99. So it's a little, you know, there's a lot of that older brother, younger brother bullshit.
Right.
But there's also like, there was some really bad times, and there was, you know, when our parents split, like we kind of got a little closer. And, but it was just a lot of like, kind of had to figure out life a lot on my own. Because when my parents split, my mom was like, I'm done being a mother. I'm going to go kind of party for a little bit and be single life.
Sure. Mm.
And dad was like, yeah, fuck this. I'm going to go date this girl from church. And it was next thing you know, I'm just like, okay, I got all this time on my hands. I got shit I got to figure out, you know? Especially as a young man, it's like your parents are kind of, they're supposed to teach you some shit.
Were you still in high school at the time?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were going to try to hold it through till I graduated, and they couldn't. They couldn't do it.
That's a stereotypical thing.
Yeah, and they're civil, they're still friends. Mm-hmm. You know, it was a very civil divorce, but it was still just like, all of a sudden I have no guidance. Mm. You know, I got no, like, that's like the number one thing to be successful is have a happily married family, a household that supports you, at least through high school, you know? And it was like, oh, cool, now I gotta, you know, like, I already kind of knew how to drive by then, so it wasn't a big deal. But it's like, you know, typical father-son stuff. It's like, Dad, I like this girl. Like, what do I do? It's like, no. You know, there's a lot of, like, those kind of things as a man you got to figure out, you know, as I'm sure. Or your girl, like, whatever, you know, both sides have their things they you know, you typically learn with the parent. It's like, no one to ask advice to, you know?
So did you kind of keep it kind of straight? I mean, were you able to somehow miraculously, I mean, did you stay in school?
I graduated high school, yeah, and actually had a math scholarship offered to me, which is so
were you the people at school kind of know what you're going through, or were you one of those kids at school that no one really knew what was going on?
With my shit, I like to keep my mouth shut.
Right. So you were kind of quiet about it.
Yeah, and it's, you know, so I was quiet about it. Like, my friends kind of knew, but it was also, It's like, I started doing trade school when I was a junior, solely because it was like, at this point I took interest in cars. RWB, I'm like, it was a lot more of, like, yeah, the Porsches were cool and widebody, and it was that cool street culture. But it was a lot more of, I was like, oh, that guy loves what he does. He's got a purpose. I want to do that, you know? And it left its imprint. There was one car in particular that I was like, wow. And I kept getting my phone taken away in class because it was at Seaman. I'm like, this is some sick shit, you know?
Was it my NSX?
Sadly, it wasn't.
Okay, yeah. All right.
But actually, I think I remember seeing pictures of your NSX around that time because that rap was like, yo.
That
like
was a
this,
joke, though, but still, yeah.
No, but it's like, I remember your NSX along with like a couple cars from around that era when I was
Right.
like, oh, this is sick. You know, and I wasn't going to car shows in Scottsdale. I was going to pavilions with friends. We didn't have any money, so we're like, let's park outside the show so we don't get laughed at. You
Right,
know?
at his GTR. We rolled together.
I think so, probably.
Yeah, the one with the crazy rap, the mermaid, and it was pretty much one of the two GTRs around here that got all the attention.
Yeah, and then there's a guy named Mason. He's got a bright orange S2000.
Oh, of course, yeah, everyone knows.
And
Mason.
like,
yeah.
I remember when that got shown off, and we tried going to some of those meets back when he was doing it off of like Power and 60. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that
was the Envious meets.
Yeah.
Over there at that Kmart or whatever, right?
NVUS, yeah. They were in an old Kmart. I think it was right when Kmart shut down, or actually,
Yep.
there's a Kmart over here. It used to be a Toys R Us right here.
That's it.
The Toys R Us closed first. Kmart closed a couple years ago. But yeah, and I think there was like a Taco Bell or a Wendy's or some shit there. But yeah, so we were kind of like, you know, you start to figure out your career path in high school, and I was like, you know, I took auto class, and I want to become a pilot, but then it's like, have you seen Raising Arizona?
Yeah,
you know, where
I haven't seen it in a long time.
You know where he finds out he's colorblind?
Yeah, I got to see that
like,
movie again.
Man, I got glasses. Fuck me. You know, like...
That's like the first Nicolas Cage movie that I remember.
Yeah. I was right, because he's the dad in it, right?
He's like the crazy, yeah, because that's the movie where they try to kidnap that baby or whatever.
I haven't seen it since my parents were married.
Yeah.
So it's
10, I don't remember much about it, but
10, 11 years at least.
Oh, it's definitely. It's older
I just remember the kid finds out he's colorblind. He's like, I can't become a fucking pilot, you know?
Yeah.
For me, it was like glasses, and I already had a surgery because I already had one big health issue at the time. So I already had surgery for that, and it's like as soon as you have something like that, you're just like, nope,
you're done. Yeah.
You're done. Like titanium staples, nope.
Yeah.
We don't want you, you know?
What are the staples for?
So I had it's going to happen a lot in my life, I found. I have a lot of very unique and rare health issues. So in high school, or junior high, I was having like hypoglycemia.
Okay, I know what that is.
You know, Paul Blart shit. And one day I was in school and like I would black out. I wouldn't remember.
Oh, wow.
But I'd be like I'd still be, you know, around. I guess one day I told my math teacher to go fuck himself. And we had a sub that day, so the sub called security, and security they noticed my eyes were dilated in class, and all the kids were like, he's doing drugs, you know?
Of course, yeah.
And so they called the nurse, and I guess I tried punching the nurse. And luckily I missed, thankfully. And so Officer Story was his name. He was a security guard. His son was diabetic. So Officer Story shows up, and he's like, you don't, like, I'm getting fatherly instinct says to check his blood sugar, you know? So they, like, wrestle me to the ground. Blood sugar's at 17. Usually, for those unaware, it's, I think, 90 to 125 is where it's supposed to be. Diabetic, your blood sugar's too high, you don't have enough insulin. Hypoglycemic is blood sugar's too low.
Okay.
Anywhere between 20 and 0 is obviously fatal. And I think it was 17.
You're on the edge.
Yeah, and so I would just kind of go in a sleepwalking state and just, you know, you start getting angry. It's, you know, you start getting like temper things. Your vision starts to blur. You get a little woozy sometimes. And then they were going, so they started like, he didn't have this. He wasn't born with this. Like, his pancreas is fine. What the fuck's going on? You know, all the blood works check out. They find a tumor on the pituitary gland, which comes in later. But they're like, we're just going to give medication for that, not getting bigger. You know, it's just there. It's kind of a common thing, you know? So they're like, we'll just leave that one be. They're checking everything, and they're like, dude, we don't know. I'm starting to get in specialists, and people are starting flying from other countries, like doctors, and they're like, dude, we don't know. There's a doctor out here, and he was endocrinologist, and he's just like, I got a hunch. I'm just going to shoot in the dark here. So they did a scan of my pancreas. It's called an insulinoma. They found a tumor probably about the size of like a small apple on my pancreas, and it was pushing up just enough to where it was causing my blood sugars to, you know. So, and of course, you know, we started going to the hospital, Phoenix Children's, and getting doctors and surgeons, and They do my surgery, make through, and next thing you know, I got like hundreds of people coming in and out of my room all day. They're like, my dad's like, why the fuck are you guys here?
Research.
And they're like, dude, we've only heard about this in textbooks. Last case was in like 89.
Right.
Like this is rare. We have to study this while it's here. So finally get out of the hospital, this and that. My dad's like, hey, like you guys should like check, like just copy the notes from this person because you're all going to take the same notes. Just copy the notes, Google Doc that shit and share the file, And made it through that, leveled out, went back through high school just fine, kind of chunked up a little bit, so the weight was kind of falling a little bit. It fucks with your
Was
hormone.
it meds induced? Just because of pancreas and
just because the pancreas, it messed with your hormones, messed with my growth hormone, growth hormone, just all kinds of them. I can't remember a lot of them off the top of my head right now, but it messes with you, right? And going through those years, your body's very sensitive, it messes with, puberty, how you mature, this and that, And so I made it through that, going through high school, again, life's just fine now. I'm just like, okay, it's normal. And it's figure out what you want to do for work. And then they're kind of taking us on tours through EVIT and like trade schools and colleges when we're sophomores and juniors. And I was a sophomore. I remember the paint and body teacher was like, I have more places asking for students to give jobs to than I have students to get jobs. And he's like, automotive doesn't have that issue. Diesel doesn't have that issue. And I was like, I wanted to be an actor, but I couldn't get the film courses. I kept getting auto courses in high school. So I was just like, fuck it. We're going to see how this goes, right? If I could go back, I'd be like, dude, don't do it. But, so that was that. And, I signed up for it. I was always really good at math. Like I wouldn't do my homework freshman year. My teacher was like, okay, you keep 100%ing your tests. And she's like, I have no idea how you're doing it. Because I just sleep in class. I wouldn't do any classwork. My seat was in the back
You're
corner.
That kid.
My seat was in the back corner. I'd be asleep. And I'd do that for the first semester, I was retaking everything. She was giving me different test forms and acing them, So she's like, all right, I'm going to switch your homework scores and your test scores. So that way, majority is...
That's a gift, dude. Like, I suck at math.
I'm like stupid genius with numbers. Always have been. And so and she goes to my my geometry teacher, and she's like, hey, Nick's not going to do his homework. You're going to be surprised he's going to ace everything. Just watch, Every teacher tried. She's like, watch this. Nope. Same deal. Junior year was Miss Zeller. She was a Gilbert PD cop. She was cool. Same deal. She tried. She's like, okay, you're just acing all your tests. Senior year, I had a teacher named Miss Crooker. Miss Crooker had my brother 4 years before me.
Oh, boy.
Tyler left a little bit of reputation. So it was like, they were like, there's a Kingsley, right? So I always tell people, like, if you've seen Van Wilder, that was kind of me in high school. Like everybody kind of knew me. The security guards let me drive the golf carts around. Mm-hmm. Like I was cool with everyone, I wasn't super popular, but everyone was like, oh, it's Nick. He's cool, Walking the highway, give teachers high fives. I didn't even know, But Miss Crooker was like, okay. She's like, you're going to do your homework. And she was the only one who got me to do it. But she was collecting on the other side of class, and I was like doing it. And she's like going down the rows, grabbing papers.
How did she get you to do it? Was it a conversation?
She just sat me down one day, and she was in the Navy. And she served up in Alaska, and she'd tell us some stuff that I don't even think is like, like probably still hush-hush now about like Russian nuclear testing and other stuff like that. So it was like, there was like some respect. I'm like, oh, it's responsibility. Dad was in the Air Force, grandfather, family members. I'm like, okay, I can respect that, But she just talked to me like a person respectfully. She's like, hey, like, she's like, you're going to do your homework in my class, for my class. And she's like, I'm going to help you out. You're not going to know how, but at the end of the year, you'll realize it, right? And so she just eventually got to the point where it was like, again, she's collecting. I'm doing it as she's collecting homework, and I'm doing all the math in my head. And eventually she's like, hey, I need you to show your work. So I'm like, shit. So now I'm doing it as we're waiting to go in the class before the bell rings, writing everything out, and then it became like, hey, like, dude, I'm not going to collect yours if I see you doing it. So I'm like, oh, God damn it.
Right.
Figure out
Played
the next.
hardball a little bit.
Now I'm just like, okay, I'm going to do it my English class that I have every day. And eventually it was just like, she's like, okay, like, Nick's going to do it not at home. But she was giving me tests for like college courses.
Like AP stuff.
Like
even though they don't
AP and beyond AP stuff.
Right.
Like she was kind of just giving me some stuff just to like.
Do they have that here? Because I know Arizona.
Chandler had AP courses and stuff like that, but what she was doing was I found out for a lot of my homework stuff. Because like I wasn't copying anyone's work because I was acing all of this. Like,
right.
When I say acing, like I was getting like 98, 100% on everything. And
I wouldn't know what that's like in math.
like for me, it was English. I'm like, what do you mean? There's 3 theres? Like that's
sure.
that's
that was your
like
yeah.
Comma, colon, like what's the like? That's where I was just like, huh, But eventually, it got to the point where what she was doing is she was giving me like actual college grade papers, and so same deal with science was you're supposed to have an entry-level BS science class freshman year, then it's chemistry and biology, then you're done with your science courses at junior year. I had biology freshman year. I couldn't go back and take that. You could only take that BS science course for the credit if you're a freshman. So I tried doing physics junior year, and I was like, too many numbers. I'm too lazy. Fuck this. Went to human anatomy. Teacher was not nice. Only not nice teacher I ever had. Immediately switched out of that. Senior year, I ended up back in physics, and I waited till like you had like 6 weeks to change. I waited till the end of that 6th week. Right. And so I sit back down senior year, Mr. Beck's like, hey, Nick. I'm just like, oh, fuck. I thought you forgot by now, Then once I realized, I'm like, oh, it's just algebra. Cakewalk.
Right.
So between all my math teachers got together, Mr. Beck got with them. They started calling around. Next thing you know, I'm getting a math scholarship offered to me. It wasn't a full ride, but it was pretty damn good.
Where to? You remember?
Ooh, one of them was.
And then why not?
One of them. It was math, but it also translated into physics for a lot of places. I think some technical school out in Boston. Harvard had a math one. I remember the Harvard one specifically because like that's a school you're just like, whoa, that's for like rich people, And we didn't have the most money growing up. We didn't have nothing, but we,
Right.
I remember there were days where it was like, hey, we're going to skip a meal because money's tight. Or other days where it's like, hey, we're going to have a nice dinner tonight,
This lower middle class.
Yeah. This is where I was too smart. Is I just kind of did the numbers. I'm just like, 70 grand in 4 years is doable, but I'm not going to kill myself going through working some bullshit job trying to pay for this myself because my parents were divorced and there was no way they were going to help out with that. They're always like, oh, we could, I'm just like, guys, I know how much both you make. Mom, you work in preschools.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just like, Dad, no. Like,
right.
I was starting to get like a little grudge with my dad. So I was just like, the less help from you, the better.
Right.
And so I was just like, okay, choices made. Automotive. And then it was, it's like the stuff you like. What I found is if you kind of just think on that and almost manifest it a little bit, the stuff I loved is what had my interest.
Well, how did you get into that space at this point then?
Okay, so I started, my first shop I ever worked at was a chop shop. They have since got closed.
Like a legit chop shop?
Like a legit chop shop.
TV?
Yeah, like the ones where you're like, my first job was swapping VIN numbers on a Mustang. I think statute of limitations is over by now. But
well, you didn't name the chop shop.
That is true. And they have since closed. I should add that.
Right.
But I got tired. I'm like, I get here. Everyone else is going home. I'm like, how can I learn this stuff? Like, because school really wasn't teaching me a whole lot. It was more of like, hey, I'm going to school for this. And they're like, okay, you have an interest in it. And that was my foot in the door. They weren't teaching me anything practically in school. And so, again, I was seeing this Porsche. I kept getting my phone taken away. And I was like, RWB, this is amazing. I know these guys don't buy because I'm like, engine built in Mesa, Arizona? Huh?
Right.
So I no-called, no-show to work that day. They didn't even notice I didn't show up. Went around the street to Chris's shop. Walked in, I'm like, hey, explaining, like, I know you guys don't do the body kits.
Was that the black one that was being built over by UMS? Probably 2016, 17.
So that's Levi's car. There's a 993. There's another car called El Jefe. El Jefe, there's legal things. We can't talk about that with them.
Maybe that was El Jefe.
El Jefe was a long
Was it
nose.
a 9? Okay.
So El Jefe looked like a 71. It was a 964 underneath. Levi's car is a black 993.
Pretty sure this was a 964.
So Levi's, you're probably thinking a Levi's car. Did it have a big wing or did it have a ducktail?
I don't remember.
Okay.
This was This was sometime between.
Because I know, because both those builds happened in the same year within 6 months of each other.
Oh, well, shit, never mind. But,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're both black.
There was a shop over there at UMS.
That's TurboCraft. TurboCraft is...
Oh, that's right. It is
yeah.
TurboCraft. Okay.
Yeah. And so I was just like, hey, I love these. I know you guys don't do the body work, but he says you build the engines. And so it's like you walk into Chris's office, and there's about 10 feet from the entrance door to this door. Doesn't say a word to me, just opens the door to the shop. Levi's 993 is sitting there. And I was like, oh, never saw one. And, as like a kid, you're just like, oh, you start to like float a little bit. And close the door. He's like, all right, man, go home, make a resume, bring it back. And we'll go from there, right?
What'd you put on the res?
Oh, dude, it was like...
Worked at Willie's Chop Shop?
I didn't even put that shit on there. Yeah, I was just like, I told him I was working at like some sketchy shop, and I'm like, dude, they're paying me under the table. Like, they're not teaching me anything. Like, it's like, I'm a kid in high school. I'm just like, I kind of just want something fun around neat cars right now. If I can learn it, great. If you at least get me through high school and I can hop on somewhere else, great. Had a little 93 Toyota pickup truck at the time. Broke every traffic law on the way home. Typed that bitch up. Broke every traffic law on the way back. Because I was like, I'm getting this job. And I walk up, and he's just locking the door. Walk up, hand to him. He's like, cool. Call me back tomorrow after I get time. I'm like, sweet. Go home. Call him. He's Molly, the kind of the office lady, picked up. She's like, yeah, he hasn't got time. Call back tomorrow. I'm like, cool. Every day for 2 weeks. And eventually to this day, like, I love Chris. He's still a great mentor. He's still a good friend, and he's given me a lot of solid advice. I'm almost positive he hired me just to be like, I'm tired of fucking this kid calling.
Right, yeah. Persistent. He's like, this kid's persistent.
Yeah.
Find something for him to do.
I've always kind of had a good hustle about work. Aside from COVID, I've never been without a job for more than 2.5 weeks. I've always been like, if you see me, I don't have a job. I'm like, dude, I'm making phone calls that day. I'm showing up, like I'm calling one place, doing a phone interview as I'm driving to another place. And so, yeah, I worked there. I got to see a bunch of RWBs. And that's where it was like, I learned things like, again, what was popular in high school. Like Chris was like F40, Goat, Countach, Amazing, 959, like, because that was his era of when he was in that age of like, the first holy trinity, if you will. And so it was like, I learned that. I learned just like, hey, dude, if you're going to put your name on something, make sure overdo it. If it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. You give it blood, sweat, and tears. Give it everything you got, And those are still values I hold to this day.
Right.
And I got into collision after that. But it was like I got to see a bunch of cool RWBs. And working next door to UMS, they would have JDM shit. So I'm like, oh, you guys got a widebody Supra that was in the front cover like Super Street in 2002 with a plexiglass hood on it,
Totally.
Makes 1,400 horsepower, Just like cool shit like that, And I got into collision just because it was like that was kind of the next step I knew about. And, again, Phoenix is now it's kind of popping off, but it's still not the custom metropolis of custom work is, in all honesty, it's rare. There's not a lot of it.
There's not a lot of custom guys around here.
Exactly. Let alone the people who can afford to pay it. The custom guys are usually the guys with the Civics and the S2000s, which now are pricey. But, when pre-COVID, it's like these things were dimes on the dollar, So, yeah, collision was my entry. And then that was, all 2018. Then all 2019, beginning of 2020 was, COVID hit. Got laid off. I finally got myself into the paint department because I wanted to become a painter. And, again, COVID, lost my job. Ended up at an exotic shop shortly after that. I'm doing like widebody Ferraris and shit for celebrities and this and that. And then that ran its tail for a couple months, and my health started taking a nosedive, like really, really bad.
Was it related to the high school or another health issue?
Genetic condition called MEN1. It caused the thing in junior high, but this was a separate issue. Now, homie upstairs was like, I'm going to get bigger now, and I'm going to fuck you up, right? I didn't realize it. Everyone's like, COVID weight, right? Well, I didn't realize over the past year and a half, I started gaining weight. I graduated at like 155. I was, I'd say, pretty good shape, And all of a sudden, end of 2020, I'm like 200 pounds. I'm like, the fuck? And I'm 5'6". So it's like, I'm not tall, I don't carry the weight very well. And, I was going to an endocrinologist, and my dad got into Mayo because he had liver cancer, and they're like, hey, you got this rare thing. Can we look at your kids? And he's like, yeah, sure, Brother made it out scot-free. This one's fucked up, And they do a test on me, and they're like, how are you walking? I was like, what? I didn't even, me and my mom.
Were you like feeling anything, or what? How did you know that your body was a little off?
So this is what I tell, like, especially car guys. I'm like, dude, when your suspension wears down, you don't feel it just wear down. It's gradual.
It's facts.
So my energy levels and everything was gradual.
Yeah.
And I was like, and on top of that, I'm dealing with like depression and other shit and this and that, and
Depression from
just life.
Yeah,
just it's like, hey, like never really feeling love as a kid and this and that. I missed out on a lot of love as growing up.
This was coming out of 2020.
This was.
That was a tough time for
August,
a lot of
September,
people.
So it was like, and I'm stuck in the same house with my dad, and we're talking once a week, once every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We see each other every day. We're not saying shit to each other. There's no like, hey, let's go throw the football, like nothing, And I got a friend who I thought was a friend, hired at Creative Bespoke. That's where I was working at the time. And, he's saying shit up front. I don't think it was ill-intended, but I'm also way too nice, give way too many people benefit of the doubt.
This was a coworker at Creative Bespoke?
Yeah, who I got hired there was, I thought, a friend outside of it,
Okay, yeah.
And again, I could be wrong, but I don't think it was ill-intended. I think he was just saying shit, and he didn't realize what consequences it had.
Right, okay.
Next thing you know, he's making mistakes, and I'm kind of like, hey, he's my friend, like, guys, like, he's new to this, like, I'm kind of taking some bullets, right? Before you know it, there was also a shop manager that got promoted who he had it out for me. He's like, oh, this is paint body, I'm going to give him a bunch of mechanical shit to do, and I'm like knocking that out of the park,
Is there a lot of that in the industry?
Oh, yeah. It's especially in the custom, when you start getting flashier, it's aggressive.
People think they have something to prove.
Well, yeah, they're just like, oh, you're not going to beat me to get to the next step.
Oh, okay, yeah. I can see that.
Now, it's like also on the collision side, it's like by this point I already did a Veyron and I've done one Senna before I worked here. Because when I graduated at the trade school, I had all these platinum certifications. So on a sheet of paper, I was the most qualified person.
What trade school did you go to, and why'd you go to the trade school?
EVIT, just because they had a partnership with the high school. It was just, that was the option. It was like, do electives, so I sacrificed a social life too. And I started working the day I turned 16. First job at Taco Bell. Didn't really do much there.
Good for you.
I think I worked like a total of like 16 hours because they wouldn't give me more time than like 2 hours every Saturday. So I was like, okay, fuck this.
Right.
Then I got a job at a car wash my friend Braden had. Within a year, I was managing the bitch. And they did their whole manager thing, and they're just like, you're not 18. Your store makes the most money. I'm just like, yep. What you want? Like, and so it was cool. Like, that's where I learned, like, just to be polite, because it's like a lot of these guys are ex-convicts.
Right.
And some of them do some pretty serious shit, but you realize, like, hey, some of these guys can still be some pretty solid dudes. Best not to piss them off. So I learned, like, my running rule a day is if I can make one person laugh a day and just be kind and happy, I've done my daily duty, right? And so I'd always kind of like crack these jokes. If I can get these guys to laugh, have a good time, and just be polite and respectful to them, and they're polite and respectful to me to the point they're like, hey, dude, like, we got your back. And I'm like...
Yeah, but then meanwhile, you're dealing with all these issues.
Yeah, right?
And maybe that's kind of like...
And so later down the road, it was like, again, COVID, I think everyone realized how alone they were. All of a sudden, you weren't talking to your friends.
Yeah.
You weren't seeing your friends, and you're just like, oh, shit, Those who didn't have families like me, we're just like, oh, voices in my head, hello, and it sets in, and it caused a lot of damage to a lot of people mentally, socially. You can see it in kids now. Like,
yep.
There's a certain age group, and I'm like, if you graduated here, like, I don't want to work with you. Because I'm just like, it's nothing you did, but I'm like, just how you react to things now and how you act. I'm like, no, I nope. And, so it's like, I'm dealing with all this, I'm dealing with stuff at home. My health is now falling apart. I'm dealing with stuff at work. And using the same friend group I had, so it was like, if I dealt with some shit at work, I'm hearing about it in the friend group. So it's like, I have no escape from anything. So eventually got to the point, manager pulled me in, he's like, hey, dude, I'm going to put you on leave for a week. I'm like, dude, fuck you, dude. So I just quit. I'm like, I don't want to deal with this bullshit. I quit. It was the only time I got out of cars. I was contracting.
Was this at Creative still, or?
This was, at the end of Creative, and then, I was starting to pick up some side work around then. Because I got to know some celebrities, hang out with some people, so it's like I had a couple weeks where I was kind of just freelancing, just random jobs, but I also didn't have a lot of bills at the time. And then I got into contracting. And so I was like building like barn doors for houses, and I was like remodeling kitchens, and that was a fun job. But that's where I realized, I'm like,
a little different than some of the other stuff.
Yeah, like we'd set up nail guns on the fence, or we'd set up cans on the fence and pull the safeties back on the nail gun, and we're all, I always think the Happy Gilmore scene with the helmet. But so that was that.
Just don't shoot anybody in the head with a nail, right?
Yeah, But I ended up frying a power box. I got a letter from the city of Gilbert. That's pretty funny. I have it framed. But yeah, so it was like, I had that, and then, they're starting to figure out what's happening up here, and they're like, dude, you need a surgery. I was like, oh, that's cool. They're like, no, it's bad. Like, you might not make it out of this. And so at the time, the Dogecoin stuff was taking off. So I said a Hail Mary. I was like, here's I'm going to put $800 in like November 2020 into Dogecoin, because I'm like, I saw a tweet about it, funny. And forgot about it completely. Well, January happens. There's that whole GameStop AMC fiasco.
Right. Yep.
And the Dogecoin starts to take off a little bit. So we're building doors one day. My coworker's like, hey, dude, didn't you buy some of that Dogecoin in like November? I was like, yeah. He's like, it just hit a cent today. You should probably look at that. I'm like, oh, I have $3,200. Holy shit.
Not a bad return from 800.
This is in January. So
yeah.
Like, oh, neat. Put my phone on snooze, get back to work. Fucking month and a half goes by. He's like, hey, dude, just hit 7 cents today. Oh, cool. I got 12 grand. Neat. Phone back in the pocket. Next, that was like Wednesday. By Friday, it was at 12 cents. And now it's kind of doing the hike everyone remembers, And so there was a way you could set a cap to where you could cash out if it hit this, even for a fraction of it. That was like 50 cents. It's not going to go higher than 50 cents. It's not going to hit 50 cents, right? Well, day before the whole SNL skit thing, it hit 50 cents. It ended up going to 53 that day. Next day went to 74.9 cents. Which, if it hit 74.9 cents, I think it would have had like $48,000.
Wow.
But it cashed me out at about like 33. So I went into this first brain surgery, because your pituitary gland is basically if you put your finger between your eyes on your nose and on your temple, like that where they meet, it's the front of your brain.
That's where it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it was pushing down.
They teach you that? It's
doctors
so it's like back here somewhere.
Yeah, it's behind your sinus, basically.
Yeah.
In between your eyes. So it's pushing down on pushing down on my sinus, on my optic nerve, and there's 2 arteries that run there. And so it was basically crushing one of the arteries. So I was waking up every day with bad nosebleeds. I was bleeding out of my tear ducts for like the last month and a half before the surgery. They're like, hey, like there's a very real chance you don't make it through this.
What year is this now?
21. Yep. So May 12th of 21, surgery went in. I got this tattoo. Literally less than 20. I think it was less than 12
What's
hours.
The tat? I see. It looks like some jokers.
Yeah, it was just a bunch of playing
Jack,
cards.
King, Queen.
Yeah, just a bunch of playing cards. Because one of my friends used to always say, he's like, dude, the only bet you can ever place is on yourself if you're going to be there. So I was like, hey, if I don't show up to the surgery thing, then I'm toast. If I do, there's a chance. There's a YouTube quote underneath. Well, the quote's from something else. It's keep moving forward. But there was a YouTuber I watched at the time who I liked at the time. Not a big fan anymore, but his video is kind of playing in the background. Doctor's like, hey, dude, like, just think about life. Just think about some shit. This is a big hoop you're going to go through. And I just remember I was, like, thinking about, I'm like, well, could be worse. And YouTube video was playing in the background. Just at the end of it, he's like, just keep moving forward. And I'm like, well, that's what I got to do, So cashed out of the Doge, went into that. Made it through, used what Doge money I had to basically pay what medical bills I had after. I had insurance, but you still left with a chunk,
Oh, absolutely.
And found out next year rolls around, you can write off medical bills and your taxes. I was almost penny for penny. Just made it through, scot-free, right? And after that, I hopped back into cars and Patrick Motorsports, and now I'm doing like 935s and 916s and these rare Porsches and these race cars and getting into that route. So that was good. You know, I got Whittington 935. Anyone doesn't know them, they're the big drug runners who are fucking smuggling weed and shit in. And everyone's like, how'd you guys get into racing? And they're like buying cars cash at night, and they're putting nitrous in the cars and doing these killer qualifyings, blowing these engines on these Porsches.
It's hilarious.
And then the day before the race, they're like, switch out the engines, guys, you know, in the 70s. I got to restore one of those cars. It was pretty cool. 917 was pretty sweet. A couple 934s. The first Singer.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it was already done, but it ended up coming back.
What did you do on the Singer?
When it came back for some paint issues. And we're not talking the DLS. This is like the base model Singer, you know.
Throw some air quotes on that.
Yeah. I mean, it's still 700 grand, but it's like base model, right?
Right. So you went through all that kind of stuff. Now we're creeping into like the modern era, I would say, because we're in the middle of 25 right now, or almost middle of 25.
Yeah, so this is...
What have your last few years looked like?
Well, so this is 21, so this is still pretty fresh, you know, and I ended up back in a collision shop at kind of a higher-end collision shop. It was like, I actually worked on your NSX because you sold it to Yoshi. Mm-hmm. So I worked on it when he owned it. And I got to be paint prepper, and I was just doing this stuff. So we'd get like McLarens and Ferraris and some stuff like that in. And again, I'm still kind of doing some stuff on the side. You know, and then a year to the day of the first surgery, I found I had to get another one because it decided to come back after they're like, it's not going to come back, right?
Right.
Instead of hacking the front of my face off like they everywhere else,
How did they do that though? Now you say that, because
so
for the people who aren't watching this, let me describe Nick's face. Right now, he's got like this super weird incision. I don't know if you guys ever seen Vanilla Sky, but in that movie, Tom Cruise had like a lot of shit going on. And so, like, Nick, you have to watch the video because it's hard for me to describe it, but it looks like he has a Phantom of the Opera mask on right now. No, seriously, just joking. But how do they do that? Because to get to that, I mean, what do they go up your nose like on Total Recall? There's a term called
laparoscopic, where it's like they kind of stick these things inside you without cutting you all the way open.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's how they did it, but basically, the old way was like they'd cut along your nose down through the center of your lip, and they'd basically flop over the front of your face skin.
But then you're stuck with like this scar forever, right?
Exactly, you know, and they'd basically fucking crack open the front of your face.
Sweet.
So what they did for me, and I'm up at Mayo Clinic, which Mayo's a case by case. They only take certain patients. It's all experimental.
Yep.
They went through my nose, and they go through the nose to the top of the sinus and open up a small little cavity, and it's like straight shot, you know. And so, yeah, they opened it up, and because the tumor was also starting to wrap around the artery too, so it was very dangerous. Like they couldn't just cut it out; they had to and it was pushing up on part of the brain. So they took out a chunk of my brain, what they thought was all of it, and so coming out of it, I had to learn how to like talk and walk again.
Oh, the tumor, not your brain.
Yeah, well, okay. I have a chunk of my brain missing.
Yeah, but you still got the good 10%.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
I hope. The voices are still there though. The voices are actually worse now, but. You know, I kind of left that with like some PTSD and some anxiety, but yeah, they go up through your nose and, you know, they break your septum. I was actually awake for that. Yeah, because they have a rhinoplasty, I think is a nose doctor. Mm-hmm. She came in, and at this point they injected me with all the stuff that was knocking me out. And I remember she's like, hey, I just got to like look, and I'm like, okay, you know. And I just remember feeling something cold up my nose. It was a metal rod.
Jeez.
And then I didn't actually, no, I do actually remember feeling the pain a little bit. I heard that crack as she just basically like snapped it, you know?
Jeez. Yeah.
And I just remember being like, oh, what the hell? And after that, I was just out.
What the hell was that?
You know? Yeah, it was brain surgery, so like they kind of bring you up for part of it and like say ABCs, you know? And then they back out. But you know, so I make it through that, which was a pretty big thing to go through for anybody. They said he'd be normal again in 6 years. I was working again in 6 weeks. And so I remember I went to a Guns N' Roses concert. That was like 4 weeks after that. And I was wearing the shirt to the doctor's appointment the next day, and the doctor's like, yeah, they were in town last night. I'm like, yeah, I was there. He's like, are you fucking insane?
What were the risks because of that? If they wanted you on the shelf for such a long time?
Oh, well, your muscles basically just disappear. Cardio, physical stuff like that. But it's just like, just stay at home, don't do shit. Like, people don't realize if you're not active, what muscles you did have, especially if you were very active, within 2 weeks, they start to rapidly go away. So that was the big thing, was going back to work. I'm like, man, I'm tired now. I just, walked across this place. Stuff like that. Like, there was a big risk of, like, you're not going to wake up. Like, this is going to be it. And then it's because it's your head, too. You can't lift more than 5 pounds, because if you lift it, it's going to pop the plugs out. Next thing you know, your brain fluid's going to be all over the place.
Oh, fun. Which
did actually happen once. Because they're like, hey, if you taste anything salty, that's the fluid, and and I tasted it once, so I had to go back, and they had to, like, re-glue some shit, but you can't breathe. I'm having to, like, rinse my nose out, and, shit's coming out, and stuff like that, but, they're like, we straightened out your septum, so I can breathe a little better now.
Yeah.
The first one was the big risk of, like, walk, talk again, function like a human being, like, oh, shit, It was a little, like, kind of getting close to some coma days.
How was the family support during all this?
They showed up, and that was about it. They couldn't really do much.
Yeah.
Dad used to just sit in a chair over there. Mom would show up. They'd trade their days, But it was like...
Kind of like on TV then.
Because it was kind of at Mayo during COVID.
Yeah. So you could only have one person if that.
One person. Well, it was 2 guests, period. And they could only be there for like an hour and a half and kick them out.
Oh, so your visitation list was limited to only 2 people. And obviously they couldn't be there at the same time.
Yep.
Got it.
Yeah, they kind of made some exceptions for, like, okay, you guys can stay in the room together for like 5-10 minutes. But
an interesting time.
It wasn't much, if I'm being honest. They have their own lives to live. I'm an adult. Tough shit. That was that. So again, back to work doing all the race cars, and now this shop, and year to the day, I'm like, hey, dude, like, I gotta get another one of these. Boss man's like, oh, cool, don't worry, you can come back. Well, it wasn't the case. He basically replaced me before I even left. And then, again, I've always been good at just, like, knowing places to call. I was already kind of talking to someone at the time, and ended up working for him right after. The second time around, I actually started GoFundMe. Because my boss was a bunch of people I looked up to. They're like, you should probably do this to help out with some bills, Because at that time, gas was like $5.50 for regular. And I'm driving from Chandler to North Scottsdale. In a truck, because that's all I had. Like, you need some help with, like, food, other shit, like, you need some help with some stuff, right? So I did that, which now, as soon as you put yourself out there like that, some people start looking at you differently. I still get it. People are like, oh, Make-A-Wish kid, this and that. Some people just think I'm going to beg them for money,
Were you a Make-A-Wish kid, or are they just kind of playing around with that?
It's fucked up jokes.
Yeah.
It is what it is. So I've always had thicker skin, though. I can take a joke, so it doesn't. But there are some occasions where you see some shit, especially screenshots, people you're hanging out with. You're just like...
You're like, I thought we were cool. What the fuck is this?
And they're not, like, telling you about it in person. You're just, like, kind of hoping they do, and they just don't. So you're just like, okay, buddy. Shitless now,
Right.
And so that, and basically wiping out my savings from the second time. And it was funny, because I can actually see inflation, because I had the bills side by side. First one was 1.2. Second one was 1.8. And a year difference. They only used one extra piece of equipment, and I had to line it out. Second one, I made it through just fine, though. They're just like, do you have no issues? I'm like, keep on trucking, Got back out at a custom shop. At the time, a friend of mine was dying, and he just got the RX-7 that I now own. And he was like, hey, man, I want to give this car to you. I'm like, dude, I'm about to go into a surgery. I just had to basically beg people for money for the most part and put my shit. I'm like, I'm not taking a car that will look very bad.
The optics, not knowing the details. I'm an optics person too.
Exactly, right? So, make it through the surgery. I had a couple friends. Everyone was really friendly at the time. One guy gave me a free quail ticket. You know, people were getting me into events at car. They're like, hey, if you can make it to Car Week, you're going to be still in recovery, you know? So like, okay, cool. Eventually I had to pay for hotels, you know? And so I got to enjoy my first Car Week, which is kind of cool. It was all because,
Very cool.
Again, friends were like, dude, here's a quail ticket for free. You know, it's like, dude, take that opportunity.
Right.
You know, you don't have a job to go to. You already have time off. You know, like, yeah, you can spend $300 on hotels, you know? Yeah, paid through that, you know. Of course, all the donation money went towards the medical bills. And then a lot of my own savings. I think majority of it actually was my savings, wiped out practically all of it. And then he started calling me again in the beginning of September, and he's like, hey, dude. He's like, I just found out I got HIV from a blood transfusion. And we're just like,
Friend
oh.
with the RX-7?
Yeah. And it was like, oh, you already have a degenerative disease that was going to kill you. And he's like, yeah. He's like, now I went from like maybe 6 months to like maybe 2.
Like, how the does that happen? In today's world.
They must have missed something.
Obviously. This isn't 1986, though.
He's also not a party animal, too. So he's like, dude, that was the only way I could have gotten it.
Sure, okay.
And he was like, I got no wife, no kids, no mom, no dad. You know, he sold his Supra because he wanted to try to give me the Supra, too. And I was like, dude, I'm not taking that car. And he's like, hey, buddy. He's like, I know you're not going to take this for free. He's like, you've always wanted an RX-7. He's like, you did a lot of work for me a couple years ago doing the contracting stuff. And he's like, I want you to take this car. He's like, these are some taxes and some import duties owed on the car. It's like, all right, fine. You know, so I went to my credit union. Like, hey, guys, I need a loan for this much. You know, like, I've never pulled out a loan before. I just have a credit card. Like, what can I do? So they're like, oh, $9,800 personal loan, right? So it's like, did that. I'm like, hey, does this work? He's like, yeah, it's fine. Got the car. Car was delivered on my birthday, you know, from a good friend. I got to drive. That's how I met Aaron.
Okay, makes sense.
Aaron, I met like a week before I got the car, and he got me into the RX-7 club, and those guys have been nothing but family to me. As a kid who didn't come from a family, like, they've been family, you know, great guys. Like, Aaron helped me move out last year. Like, I would take a bullet for that dude, you know.
He's a great guy.
Love him to death. And other one name was Ryan Denton.
Oh, yeah, Ryan Denton, yeah.
Yeah. Ryan's
cool guy.
Ryan's the first one I met because he had a yellow FD, and I didn't know. I was just like, oh, wow, now I have this car. It's on Teehee replica. I call them Teehee 3.7s.
Like, he had reps on there?
No, I had reps on mine.
Okay.
And so it was still kind of getting transported.
Denton's RX-7 was pretty dope.
Yeah, the Ariama Mia, the yellow one. Well, he got it, had yellow BBS, or it had gold BBS LMs on it. And I was like, how cool would it be to have a dark blue FD with BBS LMs on it?
Mm-hmm.
Lo and behold, scrolling through Facebook Marketplace, pulled these off my RX-7. Hey, buddy, what year? He's like, oh, mine was a 92. I'm like, mine's a 94. Same body. That'll work. And I was like, hey, dude, I don't have a lot of money, but I'm like, I can give you this for it. And he's like, I'll be honest, it was like half of what he was offering. I'm like, dude, this is legit what I can do. I'm not trying to lowball you. If you can't, no worries. He's like, honestly, dude, he's like, you're sending me a legit offer. They're yours. Come pick them up. You know, I had those BBS LMs in the back of my truck for like a week before the car was even here.
Nice.
Car gets delivered on my birthday, for my 23rd birthday. You know, drove around once on those wheels, and I remember turning it, and I could hear the power steering pump screaming because they were also like bumped up size. Next morning, took those wheels off, swapped them out, you know. And I'm already back working at this point, so I'm starting to get some checks coming in again. I think I was working again for about a month by this point. And that was kind of just like my reintroduction to the car scene of like all these nice people. Because I had PTSD of like, oh, I was at this big name custom shop, and now these people don't like me. Now no one likes me. Mm-hmm. And again, it's like it fucks with your head, you know,
right.
Especially after COVID and all this. I'm like, I have no friends. Nobody likes me, this and that. That's what I'm going through, you know. And then I just encountered all these people with RX-7. They're super nice. And so I'm a strong believer in the world needs more kindness because, dude, I have had my plenty of dark days, right? And the darker ones are more recent than they were back then.
Right.
And
very recent.
I've had a lot of people to where just like, hey, dude, how you doing today? I will remember those people to the day I die.
How are you doing today?
Well, yeah, all right, I guess.
Yeah.
Ups and downs, you know, life kicks you in the nuts, and then it makes you feel good for a week, then it kicks you in the nuts again. But it's just...
How do you get through it, though? Because maybe December?
Oh, January.
January? Yeah. I knew very recent. Oh, yeah, because it was around auction week.
We were at the Young Motor Cars opening.
Yep. You were just kind of getting through some stuff.
Yeah, so...
Or starting to get through some stuff.
Yeah, and so, this is all like the story is still kind of, just get the RX-7 in September.
Yeah.
Get diagnosed with insulin carcinoma in October.
Again, another OMA.
No, this is the first time of cancer of any point.
Okay.
And so I remember...
legit. Because
legit.
The other ones were gross that they had to cut off.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's from the same thing. It's in the same spot of the brain and everything. And at this point, I was going to my doctor's appointments alone because there were points, like there were some weeks, I had like 20 appointments in a week. Like I was frequent. I was a frequent flyer,
Yeah.
And so I kind of told him, like, hey, could you guys keep this out of my doctor's, like any kind of medical notes? Like, why? And I'm like, I don't want my parents knowing about this. I'm starting to kind of like separate because that's how it was, It's like, hey, you're on your own, Never had to borrow money from my parents. Like, yeah, I got to say my dad's rent-free was a blessing for a long time. But there was a lot of, comments and little mental stuff. Like, it fucks you up. It takes its toll, right, mentally. And so I was just like, you know what? If that's how they want to be, then I'm just going to keep this part of my life separate, And my dad already wasn't happy that I went out and not got a car, but I ended up with a car, right? And they didn't know the details of the car. Like, I straight up told my dad, I'm like, hey, I got a car. He's like, when? I'm like, oh, I just got back from the shop. It was just delivered, like, kind of today. And he was originally like, it's going to stay outside. Parked it outside over one night with those gold BBSs. He's like, hey, it's going inside.
Yeah.
But, so now I had a very real issue of like, oh, shit, okay. But again, I've already had serious shit, so I'm kind of numb to a lot of it. So I'm like, okay, well, just show up to work every day. And a big thing of like how I get through that stuff was there's nothing Nick Kingsley could ever fucking do that will fix this or fix that, like doctors. I'm like, that is their issue. I'm just here. Only thing I can do is show up, eat healthy, not do crystal meth, just that's it, because you're not a doctor, I'm not a doctor. If you got something, you're going to go to the professionals. Just like cars, If you're like, hey, I want to put a wide body kit on a car, you're going to go to someone like me or somebody else with that skill set. So I kind of tried enjoying life and getting distracted. And then when I started my first radiation treatment in December, a friend I got the car from died that week. I started radiation treatment that week. Engine exploded that week. Car's been down ever since. And
Sorry for the loss of your homie.
Yeah, it was, it's... probably gonna be fucked up to make this comparison, but we had a lot of cats growing up, and family pets. And to me, like when you lose a pet, that's kind of preparing you for when you lose your mom, your dad, your grandfather, your friends, this and that. And it sadly it happens. I think everyone can relate to that. Suicide was pretty popular in high school, sadly. But yeah, and it was we knew his day was coming, so I kind of hung out with him when I could. The last couple times I could, and it was just a bad week.
Right.
Yeah. And then it's like, okay, now I got this car I got to fix, and I can't really fix it. I don't make a lot of money. And now I'm starting to pick up heavy extra side work. Higher quality details. I'm doing a lot of work. And, so I'm like burning the candle both ends. I'm going to work, I'm doing like Countach during the day, and then after that, I'm taking apart like Bentleys and Porsches and Escalades and all this stuff so they could PPF it without doing cuts. Trying to fix this car, and before you know it, it kind of scope creeps into like simple engine rebuild. While you're there, might as well upgrade this, before you know it, I'm chase the rabbit. Right. Now I'm just like, okay, here we go, And so I'm starting to kind of get out of most of the doctor's appointments. I'm starting to kind of get clear. I'm still going through treatments and stuff. So I was cancer-free the first time, July 18th of 2024. It was the first time. No. 23, sorry.
23.
Yeah. Time flies.
Yeah.
And you know, and so shop moved. Shop was not going downhill, but shop had to move locations. And there was a couple of internal things where I was like, it's my time to leave. Mentally, it just wasn't, morale was down. And, if you surround yourself with negative people, you're going to get dragged into some negative shit. And when tensions are hot, especially with a business owner, it's like, before you know it, you're getting yelled at, screamed at for asking simple questions or doing what you're told to do. And then you don't have the attitude and you're not encouraged to work. You're just like, fuck this. I don't want to, before you know it, you're making mistakes. You're just like, oh, okay.
Yep.
And left there. At this point, I should have, it's a funny part, like most places I've quit, I should have left like a month or two prior, and I didn't. And
stayed a little too long then?
A little too long, and higher quality details. Nikki and Jhae are some of the greatest people. They've always been nothing but friends to me. They kind of show me like, hey, dude, you kind of need friends in your life. And, so they were kind of a positive outlook I had, or a positive outing, something to look forward to. It was like, cool, after I get off this job, I get to go here. These guys are all nice, cracking jokes, having a good time. Even for the 30 minutes, everyone leaves. I'm there, And I'm working from like getting up at 6 every day, going to the regular shop. I'm not getting home till like 10, 11, 12 from hires, because
That's a day.
That's a day.
Right.
Right. And at this point, I'm pretty strapped for cash. And then I go to another body shop, a main collision again, because that's where most consistent money's at. I was promised there was work there. And I start there beginning of December. And it slows down for Christmas. I never picked back up. This is now beginning of 2024. I've done 20 interviews in 2 days. And I'm getting shot down every single one of them because the economy's creeping up now, And I applied at the shop I worked at for the past year, which is the guy who bought the building me and my old boss had to move out of. So there was tension there, right? And he didn't trust me, but he's like, hey, do I need a tech? So I remember I did all these interviews. I called him. He's like, hey, dude, like, you worked for Danny. I'll be honest. I don't really want to hire you. I don't trust you. It's like, all right, cool. No worries. I understand. That's my thing is I can talk with anyone.
Right.
Like just have a conversation. Like, if you don't like me, just like, hey, dude, like, listen, like, I don't really like you that much, whatever. Like, don't need to get reasons. I'm like, okay, no worries. I'm out. That's me. I'm a very easygoing guy. I've never had to raise my voice at anyone. Like I've been in a couple fights here and there, but it's mainly because substances were involved.
Sure.
And, but that was that. And it was like, I remember I had $53 in my bank account. And I was like, okay, I got to go to work today. So I was at the Safeway across the street. And I was going to Fry's. Or, no, my bad. Safeway. Grabbed my protein shake. I usually grabbed a morning tea. That was my caffeine bump. And, so that was the caffeine bump. And I was like, I can't afford the tea today because I got to get gas. My truck gas light was on. And I was checking out, and the Powerball machine was just glowing that day. I was just like, screw it. What's $5, right? I'm going to go broke anyways. Got one ticket, put it in my pocket. Went to the gas station, put like $20 in. So now I'm doing the math. I'm like, okay, I got like $18 left. I got to pay a bill Friday. Time to get creative. Time to sell myself in Van Buren Street. And so...
How'd that work out for you?
Helicopter's not that popular, sadly.
All right.
But, yeah, so I went to work. Robert called me. He's like, hey, dude, I need tech. I'll hire you. $17 an hour. I'm like, cool, it's a pay cut, but job's a job. And he's like, I'll pay you cash till Friday so you can get your bill. I'm like, thank you kindly.
Right.
Comes, picks up my tools. And I go home, and I was just thinking about it. I'm just like, I really hope this works, because if not, I'm fucked. And then I just laid in my bed, stared at the ceiling for like 8 hours. It's like 9 or 10 o'clock at night. They've already called the winners, so I'm like, I'm changing out, getting ready to go to sleep for the night. Feel that ticket out, and I'm just like, man, this is weird, right? So I'm like, I'll look up winning numbers. There's multiple ways to win the Powerball, but I won 58 grand that night.
Nice.
And I was able to pay off every debt I had.
Nice.
And then it was basically I took 30%, paid everything off for the most part, put the rest of it in savings for taxes. and kind of got to work. And then again, another blessing, if you will.
Absolutely.
Hire calls me a week later. He's like, "Hey, dude, Nakai just called me. The RWB's coming up. I need you to do some work to the car." And I was like, at this point, I was supposed to work on the car at other places, and it just never worked out. And I'm just like, yeah, sure, dude. I forgot the passion I had for those. And, you know, he's like, "Hey, dude, the exhaust gets here Sunday." I'm like, he's building the car Monday. But I've done Porsche exhaust on the bottom, 30 minutes in, out, good. No, got there at 1 o'clock. Didn't leave till 2:30 that night. Covered in penetrating oil and everything else to get this exhaust off and get it on, And to be back there at like 7 the next day.
That was Hires.
RWB, yeah. So February last year.
God, that's when it was?
Yeah.
I remember going up there.
Yeah. And to be back there 7, so now I was like, okay, get home 2, shower, bed by 3, crash, wake up at 6, shower, change, go out. And I'm like, hey, I brought all my tools in case one of his tools breaks or I need some. Here's all my shit. Set my tool bags down. I thought it was Hire tapping my shoulder. Nakai is tapping my shoulder. He's like, "Hey, you're going to help me with this." And I was just like, what?
Fucking A, dude.
And again, it's like, now it's and I'm still like kind of shock and awe because it's like, one, he's a hero. But again, my passion for the industry at this point was at an all-time low of just like, oh shit, like screw this. Next thing you know, I'm helping, and I got cameras and people all over the place, and I'm still like, man, nobody likes me. Like, we don't like that guy. Because now people are kind of judging me from the whole, like, thing. They're like, "Oh, you did this, you went through a surgery, and you end up with a car." And I'm like, "Do you guys not just going to ask for a question?" Like, I'll answer the question.
Yeah.
But I'm dealing with that.
If we have time, I kind of want to get into that a little bit.
Yeah, that's fine. And so I'm dealing with that, but before I know it, I'm turning around, there's cameras. And people are waving at me, old coworkers, friends I haven't seen since high school, friends I realized I was talking to at car shows. People are like, "Oh, like, you must have installed this body kit on my car for Hire, or you must have done this, or this, you did this here." Now I'm getting thumbs up and friends, and it was kind of just, it was nice.
Some frenemies in there too?
A few, but I'm cordial. Like,
yeah,
somebody could straight up look at me and be like, "Hey, dude, go fuck yourself." And I'll be like, "Have a nice day," know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that was February. Then I was just killing it last year. Beginning of May, cancer came back pretty bad. So I went through radiation again. I was told the hardest radiation treatment attempted on U.S. soil was very experimental. Going through 2 hours a week, 1 hour on Monday, 1 hour on Friday. Mm-hmm. Most treatments like 20, 15 minutes. They're not that long. And so I was like, "Okay, I have a 9 to 5 to go to." I told everybody I worked for, so it was Hire. Nikki knew. My boss, Megan and Robert at the time, knew. Couple, maybe 2 super close friends knew. And then my buddy Zach had a wrap shop, Cloak Wraps. I worked for him. I'm like, "Hey, dude, this is what I'm going through. So I got to be careful about this, right?" And it was 2 treatments a week for 12 weeks. So we're talking 24 hours total of just getting blasted with radiation. I got my fingers crossed. I'm hoping for superpowers. Okay. My way to distract myself from that is I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to load myself up with as much work as I can." So I'm just like,
I get it.
Monday, I'm waking up at 4:30, be at the hospital at 5, sitting in a chair from 5:15 to 6:15, getting blasted with radiation, leaving, going to the 8 to 5, going from 8 to 5, and now the temperature's starting to creep up to, it's summertime, shop, it's not AC'd, it's swamp coolers and hopes and dreams. And after that, going to Hires. This is all by choice. Nobody's forcing me to work, but right. It's like another thing is stay ahead of bills too.
Bills and keep them busy and keep your mind off.
And so I'm doing 3 to 4 hours for Nikki and Hire. And then after that, I'm going to Zach's for another 2 to 3 hours. So now I'm putting my body through stuff that your body's not supposed to go through, Yeah. Like, I made myself sick after the RWB because it was like, okay, no food on Sunday, barely any sleep. There Monday, helping build the car the entire time. Hire was having food show up. And I'm like, "Oh, let me just finish this up and I'll go get some of the catering, right? Because I'm in the VIP area." I finish it, gone.
Yeah.
I was like, shit. We go out the first night, we get ramen. It was just like, small little group. I was like, this is cool. And now it's starting to set. I'm like, hero, that's neat, Next day, same deal. I'll get myself breakfast burrito. Nope, start right away. Same deal. Catering gets there. I'm trying to get the lights to work because the lights didn't work when we started the build. And I'm no electrician, but I'm like, 2 wires go together, stuff lights up.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
figure it out in the spot because I got cameras over my shoulder. I'm not going to give up on this. Finish that, go get food. At the end of day 2, the build's done, you know. Kind of a larger group, get food, and then Wednesday was like, hey, I'm going to sleep in today.
Wasn't that supposed to be like a 3 or 4 day build, and it got finished like super quick?
He does all of them in 2. He always kind of stays the 3rd day in case something kind of goes over a little bit, but it's 2 days. And you know, so I go help clean up, pick up my tools, go to work, and set my tools down. A week prior, I met a girl who went to EVIT, same trade school I went to. Just briefly, she started that Monday. When me and Nakai were walking to use the restrooms on Tuesday, we go into the main office, and it, like, you know, we're talking 200 people, all of a sudden split. It's like the seas part, you know? And I was walking through, and she's like, I met you last week. I work with you now. I'm like, oh, what's up, dude? You know, so I'm like, yeah, I know she likes cars because she's here.
Right.
You know, she was just there on lunch briefly, and then she left. And so I'm dropping my tools off. She walks up to me as I'm like putting my tools back in my toolbox, and she's like, "You're a god now." And I'm like, "What?" You know, I'm immediately like here to her. You know, again, she's in high school, trade school. There's a lot of similarities. I'm like, you know, I went to that trade school. I liked RWBs. I had a lot of bad influences. You know, I made a bunch of pretty stupid choices early on in my career and my life, and I was just like, I'm going to be a good influence because that's what I can do. Mm-hmm. So I took Jasmine under my wing, kind of showed her a bunch of stuff, and before you know it, I'm doing work on a lot of extra side work at the shop on weekends, and I'm doing a lot of cool things for Nikki and Hire. I'm doing a lot of cool things for this person. Now I'm doing a lot. And again,
About when is this?
This is like March of last year, and so now I'm stacking the work like crazy. And then, you know, I start going through treatments again in June.
Okay.
And now this is point like summer's hitting.
Right.
And now I'm just like, I'm talking 7 days a week. I'm at the shop
What you should be
Saturday,
doing.
Sunday, and I'm just sending it, right? You feel the effects of radiation about 2 days after. So Monday, feel it Wednesday, Thursday. Friday, Sunday, Monday. So I feel like dog shit Monday morning. I'm getting blasted again. And so when they're doing that to your head, what I always say to people is, I'm like, if you have like a hot tea or a hot coffee, you can feel the warmth go down. It goes in your chest and it spreads out. In the center of your head, it starts getting hot. You can feel it from the inside out. And it's the oddest feeling in the world. And then your vision starts to black out around around the 38 to 40 minute mark. So
Interesting.
By the time it ends, I got about a 15-minute cool down to, you know, my vision's starting to come back because there's, you know, I got bags of ice on my head.
Wow, that's pretty wild. And so how long did you have to go through that? Did you eradicate it?
I've been clean. So basically that was all summer.
Yeah.
Which, again, I'm working through and I'm feeling like dog shit. So weekend of, is it Labor Day is in September?
Yep.
Okay. Labor Day weekend, you know, I had a ball joint fail in my truck. So I was borrowing a friend's truck, so I was trying to fix that at the shop. And going to hang out with some of the RX-7 guys because they were doing a little lunch that day. And I wasn't feeling good during the lunch, but I was hanging out because it was friends, you know. And I go home, and I get home, and I had an MRI the day before. And I knew that last week I had 2 treatments left, you know. So I've done 22, I got 2 more. And then MRI the day before to check up on things. And I get home, I go to use the restroom. It's probably going to be a little TMI, but I'm pissing blood. And I'm just like, ruh-roh.
Right. It's not good.
Not good. So my doctor gave me a cell. Saturday, I call him. He's like, I think you just have radiation sickness, but just meet me at the hospital, right? So I beeline it all the way up there. You know, they're like, hey, you have radiation sickness. You know, we didn't take into consideration the MRI, you know? And he's talking to me. He's like, dude, you're going to set off sensors at the airport. And he pulls out like a little, I think it was probably like a miniature Geiger counter or something. It's not ticking bad, but it's like tick, tick. Mm-hmm. And he's like, yeah, if you go to the airport right now, he's like, you'll probably set off something in security. And I'm like, oh, thanks, buddy. That's great. Yeah. And, but he even told me, he's like, dude, we kind of have like a little betting pool of when you would tap out. You know, not like die, but he's like, mm-hmm. We didn't think you'd make it because they're like, dude, you're young. Most of our patients are between like the age of 65 and 80, you know? And he's like, we've also never, heated somebody up this much. And I was like, thank you for that. I do my last treatment Labor Day. He calls me Tuesday morning. I get the phone call. It is 5:59 a.m. And he's like, hey, dude, good news. You don't do the one Friday. You're clear. I'm like, really? He's like, scan came back clear as it has ever been. Like, I'm going back your past 4 years of scans. It has never been this clear. I'm like, oh, sweet. Actually entered remission December. I think second week of December. So I've kind of loosely just passed my 6-month mark, I think last month or the month prior. So since then I've been clear. Had to move again, just a couple life things. Mental health has kind of been a struggle recently. Like January was a big one,
Yeah.
Thought it'd be a fun idea to try to slam a bottle of pills because I don't want to wake up. Somehow woke up just fine. Should have been way more to kill me, but meds expire. I'm not the smartest on that one.
Thank God.
Right? So, lost my job in January. I had a bunch of setbacks where I'm like, oh, shit. Luckily, I've always had great friends. And friends pulled me through that. Mm-hmm. Friends have always kind of pulled me through some shit where it's like, when I get to the point, I'm like, shit. I don't want to, friends have been like, hey, buddy, come on. Like Matt O'Connor.
Great guy.
If I didn't have him in my corner, I'd be boned right now.
Yeah.
I moved into his house. He helped me out. He was just understanding. He's like, hey, I want what's best for you and Sadie, the dog. And he's like, whatever. And so I got him, Aaron Howell, Chad, Apex Dream Cars. Obviously my super close friends, but, because it was like one moment I'm at the Young Motor Cars opening, and that was like that same week, and it's...
Chad's a good guy, too.
Love him to death.
Yeah.
Chad's kind of the one who kind of started pulling me out of my shell at car shows. He's like, hey,
I should force Chad to come over here.
You should. But he also lives basically in California.
Yeah, well, that's on him, not me.
Yeah. And yeah, just if I didn't have friends, it would.
Yeah.
So
then you, after all that stuff, did you go to Chicago?
Yeah.
Chicagoland is when you were.
It was
it
lovely.
a Koenigsegg you were driving around, or one of those
that
things?
was the Steve Hamilton's Regera and then a Chiron Supersport.
Yeah.
And again, these past couple of years,
so how do you get to that point?
So again, I helped do the RWB, which put me on the map. I worked at a custom shop prior, which
Right.
gave me a good reputation.
But like, who gives you that call?
They put out a thing on the Hamilton collection, like, hey, like we need somebody who does wide bodies. We got a project. And I was sent it by all my friends because they're a pretty big YouTube channel. I got friends in Chicago. Next thing you know, I shoot a message. I'm like, hey, dude, I do it. I just did this R32 for my buddy Art, who I met through RWBs in Naples, Florida. His family happens to own the Steelers, which was really cool.
That's cool.
I'm not a sports guy, but I'm like, that's
cool. As a sports guy, as a big football guy, that's cool.
Mom was a big sports guy.
Okay.
She's Broncos hell and back, hates the Steelers. But she was like, oh, that's cool. And I was like, okay, this is cool.
Okay.
And did that. And again, I'm doing all sorts of crazy stuff. Like when I was at the custom shop, I was driving around to Countach for like 3 months,
Yeah.
People are like, yo, who's this kid driving around at Countach? Oh, he's building race cars and working on, working on like McLaren's. Like, oh, this kid's pretty cool. And this whole reputation has been building this past couple of years too, And
so then they know also from the resume,
yeah,
in the life, they go, okay, he's not going to be
right.
This isn't too big for him. Like he's used to this shit.
So RWB was also icing on the cake.
Of course.
Of just like,
because you're
if
a god.
That guy can. Jasmine's words, not mine.
Jasmine's, yep.
And I'm like, I'm just a guy.
Yeah.
I'm still gonna stub my toe and hurt in the morning.
Right.
Yep. And so a bunch of friends sent it to me, and I'm like, fine, guys, I'll shoot him a damn message. Little did I know, all my friends are like, dude, Nick's your guy. Nick did this R32 underneath a Chevy Nomad with 2 feet of space behind him in a garage in Florida in HKS print shorts. Well, it's muggy as shit at the end of July.
Right.
Nick's your guy. And so, at one point it was down to me and another guy. And I was just texting Steve, and Steve's like, I kind of knew it was like Christmas week. I'm like, hey, dude, here's my phone number. If you have any questions, help you with anything. I'm just like, whether it's tools, whatever you guys need for the shop to install this kit, I'm like, I will give you that information. I will not expect anything. If you go with someone else, that is fine. I just want to help. That's my big thing. I just want to help. I want to make friends, cars, whole thing, right? He's like, cool. Send me a text like, hey, it's Steve. And I was like, oh, it's Steve, the owner of all of this. I would expect to be the social media guy.
It's the Steve, yeah.
You know, I'm just like, okay, Mr. Steve, all right. You know, and I was like, I think I got it. But I'm not going to tote my horn here, you know? And again, Art was like, Nick's the only guy I trust to do paint and body work. I flew him out from Arizona to do my R32. He's great. I had, you know, Aaron out here and Chad and all the other guys were like, a lot of it I found out after too, you know? I knew some friends were like, hey, dude, we recommended you. And I had friends who were friends with those guys and like, we put your name in the hat. And Steve's like, hey, dude, I love your story. He's like, I love the fact you've hustled through everything. And he's like, you've never just expected a handout. He's like, you've always worked through it if you physically can.
Right.
You know? And again, I worked through shit that people are just like, dude, how? And I'm like, dude, there were days where I was at work throwing my guts up in the bathroom to be fixing a Prius 5 minutes later. You know?
Well, that's the thing, though, honestly. And with anything we do, especially once you get with people who don't want to waste time on anything, they have a project, they have the money, they have the time, they have the reputation, and they want somebody who's recommended by other people that they trust.
Yeah.
So where they don't have to fuck around with that shit. And you just became that guy.
And the other thing, too, is like, especially when people hear that story, which a lot of people don't know about it, because I didn't tell people I went through the treatments till after I was done.
Right.
And that's when most people
are
like,
what?
They're like, dude, you were just working on my car at 1 a.m. last week. I'm like, yeah, I was also throwing up in your bushes. If you haven't, that's
they probably feel like shit, but it's not their fault.
Yeah.
And you don't want them to feel
exactly,
like that, which
right?
is why you didn't tell them to begin with.
And that's the whole thing is I'm like, guys, like, I'm a workaholic. I choose because I'm like, I don't want to be here in 5 years. Mm-hmm. I'm like, you know, I want to be here in 5 years. You know, I got goals. And when people are like, yo, dude, like, you were doing that? I'm like, yeah, dude, like, my body hurts, my shoulder hurts. Like, dude, November, I blew out my rotator cuff.
Yeah.
You know, they can't operate. They can't do anything about it. Like, I had parathyroids removed at one point because it was high calcium. Pulled the cartilage out of my knees, out of my joints. You know, it's like my body hurts. Collision is not easy on the body physically. Add in medical issues and it fucks you up pretty good. And so again, Fitment Industries deal, I'm like, oh, this is big.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
You know, spinning through the Chicago thing, as an NSX guy myself,
yeah,
you're fans of the NSX,
yeah,
and you're working, Fitment Industries brings you in.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So, yeah, it's like, you know, they're kind of relaunching all the social media stuff, the YouTubes, everything, you know, and Steve kind of moved it from Wisconsin to Chicago, where he was based out of, because he wanted a little bit more like, hey, I want to be here to kind of rebirth this thing, right?
This is Fitment, right?
Fitment Industries. Hamilton Collection, same building. Same.
Got it. Yeah, I didn't know that.
You know, so I build this NSX, and, you know, there's 40-minute video out there. You know, they give you my little shout out right at the end. And opportunity of a lifetime, you know, to be able to have such good media on such a channel. And the engagement's not the greatest just because it's like they relaunched it after a couple years of kind of sleeping.
Did you enjoy that project?
It was fun. It was different to have to kind of make a persona on camera.
Sure.
And again, I'm a technician. I'm kind of mouthy. So I'd have to like, oh, I can't say. They're like, do we have an HR department? And they're like, the video will go through HR before we upload it.
Right.
So I'm like, okay. You know, I'm used to like, give me some AirPods, I'll put them in. I always listen to music every day, every minute, you know? And that I couldn't. There's still some scenes where I'm still listening to music when I could get going, but it was like, dude, we spent 4 hours filming an intro. It was my first time ever. I'm like, oh, I got to do this, X, Y, Z. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, you know? So getting on comfy on camera, which I wasn't comfy the entire time, eventually to the point I'm like, I just imagined the camera was not somebody there. I was teaching.
Yeah.
Like that was a human face, right? So now I'm explaining like, hey, this is why I'm doing this, and I'm explaining everything and why it works and why you should do it this way and why you don't do it this way. And, you know, like, I'm not an expert on body kits, but I'm pretty damn good with fiberglass. Body kits are made of fiberglass, you know? So it was a bit of a different experience, but once I got into the groove of it, like, we were missing some, like, self-tapping screws and some other stuff, and we were getting to the end of day one. I just had the diffuser on. there's always one piece that fits like garbage, and it's the diffuser. And I just had that to put on, and I'm like, oh, well. And this was about 2:30 at the time. We ended at 5 because the camera guy had to go to like dinner or something. And we kept having problems with O'Reilly's giving us self-tapping screws. And Austin, the mechanic, he's like, does this look like a fucking self-tapping? Like, he's just like, you don't know what a self-tapper is, dude? And eventually they get us the right screws. You know, and I got the RWB Chicago guys came out because, you know, I'm friends with them. And they're like, hey, like I told one of the guys, I'm like, hey, it'd be cool if you just brought the car by for the video, you know? And the owner of the car was sick, but all the guys came out purely on their own, like on a weekend. They sacrificed their weekend. It was like, hey, Nick's in town. I'm going to go see him. He's a great guy. Cool, we love him. You know, family. My best friends, Patrick, John Luke, Max is in Wisconsin. Max drove from Wisconsin to Chicago, where Patrick and Luke met or live. I was staying at Patrick's house. You know, like Patrick's parents are super nice. They're just like, Nick, you're part of the family. My last name's King. Mine's Kingsley. So I was joking like, I'm the favorite, right? But, you know, so they're all there watching. Then all of a sudden it was like, okay, it's like 2:45. We finally get self-tappers. And everyone will kind of like turn around. They're like, Steve's collection's there. It's like a Koenigsegg, a Bugatti, Rimac, Hennessy, you know, Aventadors, like all sorts of crazy shit.
All the boring shit.
Yeah. Dodge Daytona, you know, 94 Super, everyone's favorite. R34 was sitting over here, you know.
Right.
And
sounds like a dream.
Yeah. And it was funny. Like, somebody turned around, they're like, oh, shit. And I'm like, what? At this point, I literally had one half of the car all fitted onto the car. And they're like, dude, you're quick. I'm like, oh, yeah. I'm quick with it. Like, give me music. Crank the Bee Gees a little bit, you know? Get in my zone. Boy. I'm just like,
yeah.
All right. And that day one, it was like half the car was done. Like, it was secured on the car. And then day two, it was funny, like, because I'm cheap, right? Like, I don't like to pay for carry-ons. I'm just like, personal item, and I'm good. And I was, like, cramming my bag with all this, and I was, like, fucking beating it down to, like, make it the proper size before I got to the airport, you know? I'm wearing, like, 3 hoodies to get onto the planes. And I'm like, it's too big, you know?
Right, classic.
And because I'm also giving some stuff to my friends, and I get there, and they're like, hey, dude, just wear your same clothes tomorrow. And I was like, what? Like, yeah, we need it for continuity purposes. Like,
oh, right.
Like, guys, I could have saved a shirt and a pair of jeans if I knew this information, man. You know, wear up same clothes next day, knock it out. You know, again, I probably could have had that car done in maybe 10 hours if I didn't have to be on camera. If I could just zone in and it was like, here we go.
Right.
But it was cool. It was a great experience. They gave me a Dark Horse Mustang as a loaner, and I was like, you guys don't need like my license for insurance. Like, oh, just here's the keys. You know, and I finish it, and my whole rule was Steve had a surgery the week before, so he was kind of like recovering a little bit.
Right.
And I was like, hey, dude, like, this is your car, you're paying me. I want to get your visual approval of it, like, if there's anything I can fix. So I set my flight to Monday afternoon. So, you know, Max goes back to Wisconsin. The car's technically done Sunday night. You know, they're now editing the video and doing all this, and I got like half a day to burn. I meet Steve there 8 o'clock on the dot in the morning because I'm very punctual, so is he. So he's like, takes one, he's like, oh, dude, this is killer. It's great. You know, I'm like, oh, big YouTube personality. This is cool. You're also a hard worker. You built Fitment Industries yourself. Like, I can respect this. And he's like, cool. You know, we talked about price, agreed on that. And he's like, cool. He's like, oh, by the way, if you want to drive anything, just feel free to ask. Go for it, you know? Sick.
Right.
You know?
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Yeah, and so it's like, again, a lot of stuff I don't post about is like, my buddy Paul recently got a Wyra. He has an EB110. He's got a Chiron Super Sport and a Regera. I've been driving that Chiron Super Sport and Regera for about the past year, occasionally helping him out, move some cars around. So I was familiar with a couple of the cars.
Right.
But I'm like, big YouTube stuff, I can post about this now, and it's not as big of a deal. So he's like, hey, it's like their building's here about 100 yards across is the wash place they use, the detail company. And they're like, yeah, just drive the Regera over there. I'm like, all right, cool. You know, we take like 4 of the 5 of the cars over to get detailed. And then we're like, oh, let's do a Starbucks run. And they just toss me the keys to the Chiron.
That was the video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we go to Starbucks, right? And it's, again, you can't beat Bugatti. They're just like, that's big Volkswagen Auto Group. They can dump hundreds of millions of dollars into making these things perfect, and they are, you know. And Starbucks run, broke some speed limits, you know. had a good time.
That's easy to do when everything's like 35, 45.
Oh yeah, I think I flew past a Prius doing like 195 and a 30.
Yeah.
It's just with modern cars. I'm sure you can say this with the NSX. Like it doesn't feel like you're going that fast.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, I'm doing like 50. Oh, I'm doing 120. You know?
Yeah, 130 in like a 1992 Honda Civic, the whole car is shaking, and it takes forever to get there. These modern cars, no time at all.
Another thing Chris told me, right? It's more fun to drive a slow car fast than it is a fast car fast. Because next thing you know, it's like that GR I just got. I'm just like, oh man, this is slow. I'm like, oh, I'm doing 50, and I feel like I'm going like 20 miles an hour. This is a drag.
Mm-hmm.
You know, same thing, the Chiron. Just like, oh, I'm doing 60. Oh, I'm doing 170. You know?
Right.
Especially, it's like you barely touch the pedal, and you're like, whoa. You know,
That's cool. Yeah.
It's just how solid cars are getting now, you know?
Well, hey, man, before we finish this up, you have a reputation. I see you as, and I've communicated with you, kind of a quiet, understated, a guy that's always in the pictures, a guy that's always on the scene. I don't personally think you're a mouthy person, but I don't know you like that as well. Now, we've had some fun conversations about politics that we don't have to get into right now. But you said when you were working on the RWB, or you're asked to be on that project, some people don't like you. Why is it you think that?
I'm sure it's more of just like, it's how if you ask me every day, I'm like, yeah, I'm not cool. Like that's me. Like it genuinely is me. You know, I'm a very simple of like, safe to say I've stared death in the face a couple times, right?
Right.
So I'm a very easy person. I'm just like, hey, dude, like I'm going to treat everybody with politeness and respect until I'm treated otherwise. But I still have those doubts and insecurities about myself. Because again, it was like with how I was raised and certain things. It's like, you know, your confidence.
A lot of roadblocks.
Exactly.
A lot of them.
Speed bumps.
Well,
I don't. To me, a roadblock.
You can get through a roadblock too.
To me, a roadblock is death, and I haven't hit. Well,
all right. Well, we'll take your definition. Then,
there's a little hiccup beginning of March, but
yeah.
That's a. But I just so it's like I'm always at car shows. I got really good at networking, especially last year, and I'm nice and I treat everyone with respect. There's plenty of people to where I still look up to them, right? And I've looked up to them for years, and I know I can tell by just how they hey, I gotta go talk. Okay, whatever. And eventually they're like, okay, like he doesn't like me the greatest, and that's okay. Maybe,
right.
But it's after you see him every weekend or see who, and it's like it starts to give you an idea, right?
Right.
Now there was a couple instances last year to where I was in a point where I'm like, one of the people I was just like, hey, dude, like, what's your guys' issue, dog? Like, is it something I can clear up? Like, and people still get to like, they're like, whoa.
Right.
I'm like, I'm not trying to fight you. Same friend group, dude.
Yeah.
Like, stop snake eyeing me.
Is there an issue here?
Is there something I can clear? Like, I'm not gonna go home and have dinner with you. I'm like, I'm not trying to be your best friend. We got same friend groups. If I'm getting asked questions about stuff, like, I don't want that. Again, I'm friends with plenty of people who honestly, professional respect, personal respect. Got plenty of friends who I let work on my car that I probably wouldn't hang out with after work.
Right.
I got plenty of people who I'd hang out with after work who I wouldn't give a wrench.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
And so I'm sure a lot of it's just mental. Like, again, I got my demons I struggle with. Like everybody else has them. And just treat everyone with kindness and respect, because at the end of the day, you do not know what someone's going through. I've had my dark days, and it's you get that one text from somebody you haven't heard from in 6 months, and he's just like, hey, dude, how you doing? Means so much more than people realize.
I think from all the stuff that you've kind of walked us through today, and thank you for that, one thing that stands out to me clearly is obviously you have your demons, but you have people that care about you, that enjoy you, that enjoy your personality. And I guess I would ask that you try to think about those things when you're having those dark times. And you probably do. It's easier. Yeah. It's easy for me to sit over here and say that, but I value having you here right now.
Yeah.
And I value seeing you and talking to you. So it's like, try to hold that. It's easier said than done, but you have people that care about you, man.
Again, like I'm a very isolated person.
You are.
It's like, but it's like, I've been at car shows for a long time. It's like people like Jordan, like dude, Jordan busted
Jordan's
his
great.
ass. You know, it's like, I don't talk to him a whole lot. You know, I don't mean this in a rude way. I wouldn't consider us friends, but we know each other.
Yeah,
you
you're
know?
friendly.
Yeah. Hey, how you doing? Good morning. You
Yeah,
know,
you're
quick
friendly.
brief. I wouldn't hold a conversation, you know, because he's always busy. I'm always busy. But so many people like that, and it's I think it's hard for everyone. You forget a lot of times about the people you have surrounding you. It's like,
Yeah.
big thing, person who was very important to me last year, her name's Jasmine. I was training her at work. I don't work at the same spot, you know, and she's always like, Nick, how you doing? Thank you for showing me everything, this and that, you know, same kind of cars. I'm always cracking jokes. I'm always trying to be a comedic person, you know? And that's just me, right? This year it's a kid named Conrad, you know, like he's always like, just talked on social media. And then I'm like, hey dude, I'll be at this show with Leo and his Countach, you know, you should show up, right? And he's like, oh cool. And I'm like, dude, you can sit in it, dude. Like I got the approval, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like when my engine was going out in the FD, I was driving home and I stopped at McLaren Scottsdale. And this is when I knew something seriously was bad because it'd barely start. A bunch of kids ran over and I still have the video. And they're like, oh, like Fast and Furious, can we sit in it, this and that? Like we've never seen one, you know?
I just love the FD, man.
Always.
Yeah.
Like people love the FD. They're like, we've seen Supras, GTRs, but not that thing, you know? And so I'm letting them sit in it. The mom's like, thank you so much. I still have that video on my phone. Cheers me up.
Yeah.
Because the other thing too is I was really fat at the time too. I was like 230, you know? Now I'm 130. And I lost most of that weight within a year. But, you know, so it was like, had this disposition of like, no one likes me physically, no one likes me mentally, no one wants me around, you know? But just always being able to give back. Because I'm like, I want to be, I just want to be somebody who's always like, Nick's very nice. You know, like I'll take a bullet for everybody, you know, until I'm given a reason not to. And that's how I view life. You know, there's so many people who's just like, again, you don't know what someone deals with, you know? Like I was working those crazy hours, going through those treatments. I'd get in my truck after my 9 to 5 and I would break down.
Yeah.
To have to pull myself together in less than 10 minutes to go to the next job.
Yeah.
You know? And those guys are like, hey, how you doing? Cracking jokes. And I'm like, that would help give me a morale boost to get to the next thing. And then same thing, next day. And I'm like, hey, like, and I'd, you know, do that. And that's what I try to give back to people, you know? I'm like, hey, like, be careful around this crowd. You know, their egos are a big thing now. You know, it's like, okay, like, you know, horsepower is very jaded now. People think they need 2,000 horsepower. They don't. They don't know what 100 modified horsepower feels. You know, but it's like, hey, just because he likes Civics and this guy likes Challengers and this guy likes Koenigseggs, just be nice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, that's just it. People need to be more kind to each other. And we all like cars, so we all already have one topic in common. You know? That's just me.
Mr. Kingsley, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey guys, I want to thank you for stopping by the podcast. If you like what you saw today, go ahead and hit that like button, hit subscribe, assuming you're watching this on YouTube. If you're streaming the audio, please consider subscribing and leaving a positive review. Believe it or not, that does help the algorithm tremendously. And if you're in a position to help the podcast upgrade, please consider joining the Patreon, patreon.com, hardparkingpodcast. For as little as $3 a month, you can get access to bonus audio as well as Patreon exclusive swag and free show swag. Also, special thanks to the main show sponsors, Right Honda, Right Toyota, Toyota of Huntington Beach, Claremont Toyota, and Gardenia Honda, Arcus Foundry, Autocannon, officially licensed Honda and Acura gear. Your support makes all the difference in this show. And if this is your first time checking this out, and if you truly enjoy this show, share it with the world, and I will talk to you all next week.
A beater.
Shut up!